Hi there, my name is Steve Gearhart and this is the Unagi Observer. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching this week's video. This video is a little bit of a surprise to me and I'll explain why in a moment, but we're going to talk about Sabu and Ichi's Detective Tales. Alright, let's get into it. Okay, so what's the deal about this anime? What's the deal about Sabu and Ichi Detective Tales? Why am I talking about this? So, for those of you who haven't checked it out or don't know, down below I always put a link to my CyTube channel, which I put onto a collection of anime. Sometimes they're tangentially related to what I'm talking about, or they're just fun things that I like to put out there for people to look at. And last week I was determining whether or not to put this particular anime on there. I decided not to because I hadn't watched it yet, so I didn't really know anything about it. And so when I went into this week for this week's video, I had a lot of ideas, but nothing really coalesced, and I was just like, well, I should probably at least figure out what to put on the CyTube, right? So I watched this anime, and wow. So this is a vintage anime from the late 60s. It had to run on NET network, Japanese network television, from 1968 to 1969. Of course, it comes from a manga. So let's take a look at those particular details. It was in Weekly Shonen Sunday, which is also a seinen magazine, which means that not only is it shonen, but it's also for young men. And what I mean by young men, we're talking like 18 on up. So we're talking about adult topics here. So this is not an anime for the kiddos by any stretch of the imagination. The first episode of Sabu and Ichi's Detective Tales will disabuse you of the notion that this is for children. It goes into heavy, violent topics because this is basically a kind of a police show set in Tokugawa period or Edo period Japan. So there's that. So like I said, the manga ran from 1966 to 1972. The anime ran from 1968 to 1969. The creator of this was, much to my surprise, Shotaro Ishimori. I believe that's his name. Yes, did I get it right? Yep. And he is known for Cyborg 009, the Super Sentai series, and for those of you who like their live-action vintage Japanese television series, Kamen Rider. Yes, Kamen Rider. He's one of the guys behind that. So there you go. There's the little details there of the show. So the show itself is, like I said, set in Edo, Japan, the Tokugawa period, which is after the Warring States period. And the time frame that this series takes place is, if I had to guess, probably in the early 1800s. At this point, Edo is a huge city in Japan now. It's probably hit its 1 million population mark by this point. So it's about Edo, Japan, sprawling Edo, Japan. It's about these two guys who are called thief takers, and that's kind of a loosely translation of basically what a beat cop is, a non-samurai beat cop. And so when you watch this series, you're going to see things like, wow, these guys kind of seem like on the cusp of being a samurai, and they're working for actual samurai to dispense justice and to do investigations, which historically makes sense. Samurai, if I had to describe what they would be like today in terms of law and order, they would be the equivalent of the sheriff's department here in the United States. So they have investigative powers. They're often put into roles of constables and deputies and things like that. And because they have the power of their local lords behind them and authority, and also they're imbued with a certain level of executive power from the shogunate, they're able to act as policemen within the city or villages. And so this series is about one particular district headquarters within Edo, now known as Tokyo. And it's about these two guys, Sabu and Ichi. Sabu is a well-known local resident who is kind of like orphaned, but he grows up with a strong sense of justice and order. And he is engaged to the daughter of the constable, the local constable, and Midori is her name. And of course, his father-in-law to be is a samurai and is a head of this district. And he employs Sabu as a thief taker, or what we would call a beat cop. And so when something comes up, he's on the case, so to speak. He is aided by Ichi, he kind of looks like a monk, but he's not a monk. What he is he's actually a masseuse who also trains to be a swordman, like Zatachi. And so he often accompanies Sabu on these, investigations. And so this entire anime series is literally just a crime of the week kind of thing, and it's Sabu and Ichi going out there bringing people to justice and things like that. There are undercurrent stories like Sabu's relationship with Midori, and kind of there's this unspoken, and I haven't watched the entire series, so I'm kind of wondering if this is accurate. What I'm about to say is accurate. I could be totally wrong, but I think it's also his path, Sabu's path, to possibly becoming a low-ranking samurai. Not 100% certain, but historically speaking, in the Bakuhan government, which is the 10th government that the Tokugawa shogunate employed to rule the people of Japan, this would make sense. This would be the lowest place that he could be in the shogunate government in terms of law and order and military. And if he were to be successful, he can work his way up to becoming appointed as an appointed samurai. So I think that might be a storyline here. I'm not 100% sure. So we'll see as we watch. Anyway, so historically, this all kind of gels. So, the period, what they show of us in the anime, the housing, the clothing, the weaponry, the ideas seem to gel with Tokugawa Japan. So, the Edo, or also known as the Edo period. So that's kind of cool when you can have like an anime that is really kind of honest and truthful to the historical aspect to it to a great degree. Obviously, liberties are taken, but not many. Like I said, these episodes deal with heavy subject matter, violence. Like a violent. It's basically a police show. So think of all those violent crimes. And the first episode is tough in terms of what happens to a particular family at the very beginning, which sets off the investigation. Now we're introduced to Sabu and Ichi. So there you go. There's the plot. Let's talk about the style of the show. The animation for the time period, which is 1968, 1969, is amazing. It is. They're clearly threw a little bit of money at this, not a whole lot, but a little bit, enough that it shows, and they're willing to put in. They strategically animate certain things to make the series move, to give it a good pacing, and to emphasize action and to emphasize what you're supposed to be feeling and what you're supposed to be reacting to, and just very emotive. Like for example, there's a scene where the bad guys are in the first episode, they're looking at the girl that they've captured, and they're leering at her, and what's coming next, and you see like a candle, the flame of the candle, and then suddenly the bad guy's face is superimposed and he's laughing, that evil, like, I'm gonna do something awful to you laugh. But it does those kinds of tropes and things out there and throws them at you so that you understand what's going on without having people having to say it to you, or for you actually to have to see it, more importantly. So the movement of the characters, of the people in action is amazing. The way that it's stylized is heavily stylized. The character designs on the people that they want you to pay attention to is amazing. Like your jaw is going to drop at the three villains in the first episode. You're going to be like, seriously, you took that much time to differentiate each of the three of them and give them their own characteristics in a 23-minute show. I mean, it's really, really good. It's all black and white, by the way. And again, the character designs are fairly consistent with Edo Japan, Edo period Japan. The weaponry is also fairly consistent with Edo Japan, and they make use of interesting things. And when we're talking about combat in this thing, while there is kind of like static movement and then still movements, there is a lot of fighting going on. This is definitely has a strong shonen element to it, and things are pieced together. Like they make it a point. Like there's one scene where the bad guy has a spear. It's knocked out of his hand, and they make a point of it showing going into the ceiling and being lodged in, the tip point being lodged into the ceiling. And then a few seconds later, as the fight is going on, same villain goes, oh yeah, it's up there, jumps up and grabs it and brings it back down. So it's very kinetic. It's very, it's just actiony, and it's not stilted, and you feel like that it flows very, very well. So obviously, I like this anime. Obviously, this is going to be not for the kiddos. I can't stress this enough. This is not for younger people. This is definitely for adults. If you wouldn't show Berserker to your 5-year-old, you would definitely not show this to your 5-year-old, even though it's a very much of, and in terms of character design, in terms of faces, of that time period of the 1960s. Keep in mind that one of the big things about the 1960s, the late 60s, and early 70s in terms of Japanese cinema is that you get a lot of cop movies, cop and bad guy and cops and robbers movies, live action that are happening in Japanese cinema around this time. So this kind of makes sense that this exists at this point in time and what the subject matter is. It's on YouTube. I am going to put a number of the first 3 episodes onto the CyTube, so if you want to just have a direct go over and see if you like it or not, it'll be in the CyTube. Hopefully, sometimes CyTube kicks them out, so can't promise. But anyway, check it out. I think it's worth your time, and if you want to see vintage anime done well, definitely check out Sabu Ichi's Detective Tales. It goes by some other titles, but that's the main one that a lot of people use. Oh, and the other cool thing about this particular, just a side note, is that this is one of those shows where organizations have taken the time and gotten funding to actually subtitle this anime for English viewers. So this has not always been available to us here in America for a long time. So that's kind of cool too. So any organizations out there that are willing to do that, and you got an extra $5 or so you want to send to them to help them, make subtitle great anime like this so that we can see it, please do that. All right, okay. So that is Sabu Ichi's Detective Tales. Go watch it. All right, so I thought I would add a certain little thing to what I do here, something a little bit consistent. Seems as I was going through the interlude videos, and I was throwing some Genshin Impact stuff up here, it seemed that you all liked that. So I think I'm going to add a little Genshin diary, if you will, to the channel. Sometimes it'll be on its own, sometimes it'll be tagged onto the back of a video like this week's, and just talk about Genshin, maybe show some gameplay or do an AMV of sorts or something like that. But it won't be every week, but it'll be if I have time permits, or if there's something in particular that I want to talk about, like this week. So I hope you guys enjoy that. So let's get into it. Let's get into Genshin Diaries. So the first one I'm going to talk about today, I want to talk about a particular character that is now available for play. His name is called Mika. In Genshin Impact, he is a character that we are introduced pretty recently in the last update. He represents Varka, who is the official head of the Knights of Favonius, who is off campaigning, and Mika has come back to do reports to let the other Knights of Favonius who are back in Mondstadt know what's going on. He had not been a playable character up until this point. Of course, I did a roll on the wish, and I got him. So let's look at Mika a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about him a little bit, and then I'm going to show some gameplay, throw it to some music probably, just to kind of show what he can do. So let's take a. I'm just going to go into the notes here, go into Genshin, and bring him up. He's almost a Shota-like character. I think he's the closest thing to Shota we have in here, other than Bennett. But even Bennett's not really that much of a Shota. Anyway, okay, so Mika, he's a cryo user. Okay, so that's his vision. Now he has an interesting profile, and again, I'll show this in the gameplay. He is short. He's one of the shorter male characters out there. And he's got this cowlick thing going on. It's kind of annoying, but anyway. So he has this very interesting thing about him in terms of weapons. He's a pole arm user, certainly, but he also can flick out a hand crossbow, and that's part of his E attack. So when you're fighting and you're hitting E, about every fifth attack movement, he'll come out and he'll blast out two bolts from his hand crossbow. The range is kind of limited, but you can aim it if you have the time to do so. Often I find myself when I'm in combat with Mika's character, I'm just kind of just doing it. So I haven't really mastered the aiming just yet. So let's go into his story a little bit. Let's go into his profile. Go his story, and let's I'll just read it out. Whenever he shows up at the Knights of Favonia's headquarters, Mika always swiftly finishes any discussions to be had with his fellow knights, then quietly slips away to avoid becoming a hindrance to others' work. Mika always gets nervous when someone strikes up a conversation with him, frantically scampering away right after politely putting an end to the idle chatter. The knights know that the young man's name is Mika, and that he is Huffman's younger brother. Huffman is a character you come across, an NPC character you come across, and the second son of the Schmidt family. That's kind of important. They also know that he is a member of the reconnaissance company, but nothing much beyond that. Few are aware of what Mika's job entails, nor do they know that the widely promoted, updated version of their military map is the fruit of his labor. So he kind of knows all this. So basically, the map of Mondstadt that we have, it's because of him. The new map consists of detailed statistical data regarding almost every corner of Mondstadt, with practical markers indicating road conditions, areas with heightened monster activity, high ground that can serve as temporary strongholds, and the distribution of natural resources. The amount of detail could almost make your head spin, indeed. All of this is the result of Mika's own labor throughout the 2 years he has spent traveling all across Mondstadt and investigating every inch of terrain he has set foot upon. Knights who have fought alongside Mika know that he finds using both lance and crossbow at the same time the most convenient, and his unique fighting style has left a lasting impression. However, they all have also been solemnly warned, in quotations, by Mika to never speak of him to others unless absolutely necessary. Don't know why. The quotation is, Mika is terrified of drawing the attention of others. He'll get nervous if you so much as stare at him, to say nothing of showering him with compliments. He's been a great asset to the Knights and helped us out a lot, so respecting his boundaries is the least we can do as seniors. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of who Mika is. And his voice, the guy who does his voice, particularly the American voice actor, very much a very nervous Nelly kind of character almost. It's kind of funny and unique. So in the gameplay, what you're going to notice is that the polearm that I gave him is going to be a highly leveled up halberd. It does a base attack of 396 points. The attack percentages is 21.4%. Refinement rank 5. Normal attacks deal an additional 320% attack as damage. I've got him up to level 70. And I've given him artifacts that will help him survive. I just got the character recently, so I want to be able to go through it without dying instantly by the hands of some hilly churl. So let's take a look at what he can do. Let's take a look at some of his talents. All right, demarcation. He's able to display the location of nearby resources unique to Mondstadt. So as you're looking at your map, you're going to see various resources pop up, which is kind of cool. It's kind of like with Ningguang, where you're going to be able to see those mineral deposits on the map. Same idea, except a lot more resources. So then he has topographical mapping, and he goes, let's see here. When an active character affected by Skyfeather Song's Eagle Plume and Starfrost Swirl's Soul Wind at once scores a critical hit with their attacks, Soul Wind will grant them 1 stack of Detector from Suppressive Barrage. During the single instance of Soul Wind, 1 Detector can stack be gained in this manner. Additionally, the maximum number of stacks that can be gained through Soul Wind alone is increased by 1. Requires Suppressive Barrage to be unlocked first. So it's a neat little thing that happens rarely. It just causes a little bit more damage. I wouldn't really place a whole lot of emphasis to it. Of course, you only get level 1s at this. So the actual Suppressive Barrage increases damage by 10%. If the Flow Frost Arrow hits more than 1 opponent, each additional opponent hit will generate 1 Detector stack. So there you go. So we got Skyfeather Song. Now this is the interesting thing. This makes Mika a healer. So when the Eagle Plume, you're going to see what looks like a thing to write with. I forget what the name of it is, but anyway, when you hit your Q, it comes up and it does a heal. It's kind of like a radius heal, and it's very much like Jean's radius heal, kind of like that. So he is a limited healer in that instance. Starfrost Swirl, the icon for that is his hand crossbow. That's kind of your E attack, and you can create a swirl effect with it. I haven't been able to do so just yet, but it's pretty damaging once you get it leveled up. It's only at level 4, so it's okay right now, but you need to do more with it. And of course, there's the normal attack, Spear of Favonius, Arrow's Passage, the typical polearm user kind of thing, whirl the thing around and hit people with it. So anyway, so those are the talents that you need to level up. The leveling up to get them are pretty simple. You're looking at Guide to Ballad, Sergeant's Insignia, things like that. So kind of the more easier domains to get things from. His initial leveling up, at least to level 4, is that. So that's kind of easy. So yeah, so that's kind of Mika in a nutshell. So let's take a look at his gameplay.
I'll be back. Fine. Really? Final warning. Leave the warning to me. Engaging.
Okay, so that's it for today. A little bit of Genshin Diary, the first installment of that. I hope you enjoy that. And again, watch Sabu and Ichi's Detective Tales, a really good adult-oriented police, Edo-era police anime. Have fun with that. And it's a really cool stylized anime to watch. And I think that's going to be about it for this week. Yeah, that's going to be it, and I will see you guys next time. So take care of yourselves, love you, and have a good one.